This is actually a topic I've brushed upon in various different videos. It's something that I think a lot of fans disregard, and I think it's time to finally address this. Vice captains are ridiculously disrespected amongst a good chunk of the One Piece fandom. I'd say the biggest example of this disrespect is Rayleigh, because you'll find some people who refuse to put his prime form on a level of power relative to the Yonko, and honestly, the main reason I think this happens is because of Zoro. People know that Zoro is destined to surpass Rayleigh and serve as a first mate to Luffy, in the same sense that Rayleigh served as Roger's first mate, and this has been heavily foreshadowed and hinted to in the story, and it's something that's pretty much confirmed without needing to be officially confirmed. Luffy is probably going to surpass Roger, and Zoro's probably going to surpass Rayleigh, or at least they're going to have a similar relationship in terms of power. Luffy and Zoro's dynamic is supposed to mirror Roger and Rayleigh's dynamic in a sense. Regardless, today's video isn't about Zoro, it's just about vice captains or first mates as a whole. Before we continue, I want to clear up one very big misconception. Characters referred to as right-hand men are not always first mates or vice captains. First mates are always right-hand men, sure, but right-hand men are not always first mates. A first mate is a vice captain. Characters like Marco, Katakuri, King, all of these characters are technically right-hand men of their respective captains, but they are not vice captains. They are first commanders of their respective crews. Their crew structure doesn't allow them to be vice captains. Sure, when Whitebeard died, Marco took charge of things. If Big Mom dies, Katakuri's probably going to take charge of things. And the same goes for Kaido. If he dies, King will probably take charge of things. But that doesn't make them vice captains because of the way their crew is structured. There's a hierarchy amongst commanders, but for the most part, Oda tends to portray all of these commanders in a similar light in terms of authority, and they are all significantly below the captain. For example, the Sweet Commanders of the Big Mom Pirates, they all have the same exact rank, and they're all known as second to Big Mom. And the Whitebeard Commanders have also been said by Oda to all be on the same rank too. Oda has made this distinction for a reason. There's a reason why there's different crew structures, because every single crew is different. You'll never find two crews that are exactly the same. You'll find crews that are similar, like the Straw Hat Pirates and the Redhead Pirates, or the Straw Hat Pirates and the Roger Pirates. They'll be similar, but no two crews are exactly the same. And that's why crews like Big Mom's and Kaido's, which are massive in terms of size, and you can add Whitebeards to that, massive in terms of size, they don't have a vice captain or a number two who's clear. They have commanders, and they all have divisions. That's how it works. But when it comes to smaller crews like the Roger Pirates, the Redhead Pirates and the Straw Hat Pirates, they have that first mate, or a character that can fill that first mate position, and that's why so far in One Piece, all the major first mates have been held in a totally different light to all of the first commanders. There haven't been many first mates in the series so far because majority of One Piece crews are massive in terms of size. Crews like the Roger Pirates, Straw Hat Pirates, Redhead Pirates, they're pretty rare. Those small pirate crews, you don't find much of them. But of the ones we do have, it's very clear that all the major first mates in the series so far have been very close or relative to their captain in terms of power. This is something Oda has established and hasn't changed so far. There are no anomalies to this rule. The reason fans don't fully understand this is because of characters like Katakuri, who people think is the first mate of the crew, when in fact, he's just the first commander and there is no first mate in the Big Mom Pirates. The example of first mates who are close to or relative to their captains in terms of power that I'm going to use today are Rayleigh, Ben Beckman, Killer, and Jinbei. So let's start off with Rayleigh, right? Rayleigh's a tricky one because we don't have too much to go off of, but there are two reasons why I would say he was comparable to Roger back in the day. The first reason I'll say this is because he was able to fend off a Navy admiral in his old age, and said that in his prime he would be able to do this and save the Straw Hats simultaneously. I understand people like, certain people in the community, people like King of Lightning and some other YouTubers, don't really respect admirals, so this probably isn't all that impressive to them. But if you're watching this and you are somebody who respects admirals and puts them on a similar tier of power to the Yonko like I do, you would know that this is an incredible feat. Not to mention that Roger has referred to Rayleigh as his partner, which is indicative of their dynamic, and I honestly don't really expect Roger to call a man who is incredibly weaker than him his partner. There's that mutual sort of respect amongst the two. And the last thing I'd use to argue that Rayleigh is comparable to Roger is the fact that Garp referred to him as a legend and put old Rayleigh on the exact same pedestal as old Whitebeard. So if you're putting old Rayleigh on the same tier as old Whitebeard, and we all know that Prime Whitebeard was on the same pedestal as Prime Roger, it would only make sense for Prime Rayleigh to also be on that exact same pedestal as them. Still, the argument for Rayleigh isn't as strong as it could be because we don't know that much about Rayleigh, but by arguing the other first mates in this video, it should strengthen the argument for Rayleigh since he's clearly a first mate, and since the point of this video isn't to argue the case of these characters individually. I'm not trying to make you just respect Rayleigh, Ben Beckman, Killer, and Jinbei individually. I'm trying to make you respect the first mate title as a whole, the fact that all first mates are portrayed in this way, and this is a trend that Oda follows. The next first mate we're going to talk about is probably the second most solid argument of a first mate who is close to his captain in strength, and that is Ben Beckman. Obviously, we've barely seen anything of Ben Beckman in the actual manga, but we do have some very interesting information from his Vivre card, and it states that his existence is comparable to Shanks's and that he is feared by even the powerful warriors of the New World. Seriously guys, this is enough. The fact that he, as the vice captain's existence, is comparable to his captain Shanks's is enough. There's honestly nothing more to argue here unless you, for some absurd reason, don't take these Vivre cards as canon, even though Oda has explicitly stated numerous times that anything he hasn't got the time to include in the manga will be included as canon in Vivre cards, SBSs, and novels. This is canon information, and it outright states that Ben Beckman's existence is comparable to Shanks's. Clear-cut argument, no dispute to be had. Next up, we have Killer. And again, this is a tricky argument because firstly, this isn't an official first mate, right? He isn't the official first mate of the Kid Pirates yet. I mean, he might be introduced as one late on in this arc, but for right now, he isn't officially the first mate. But it's very obvious that the first mate is the role he serves in this crew. Kid is actually very similar to Zoro in this sense, like they haven't been officially introduced as the first mate of the crew, but it's obvious that they are. Just like Zoro, he's the only other supernova that isn't a captain, and just like Rayleigh, Killer has been referred to by his captain as partner. Also, I understand that Zoro did defeat Killer whilst fending off against somebody else at the same time very recently, but I have made a video on that fight and you can find the link to that video in the description. That fight just has way too many variables for any of us to properly scale because from character motivations to Zoro's hunger to Killer's mental state, there was far too much going on for us to make an accurate analysis of how that fight would go if they were both at 100%. But that is all besides the point. The main point is that Kid and Killer have been portrayed to be relative in terms of power on various different occasions, and Oda has painted them in a similar light. And then lastly, I saved the best for last, the most concrete argument of a first mate being comparable to his captain in terms of power is Jinbei, when Jinbei was the first mate of the Sun Pirates, the guy who literally took over the crew when Fisher Tiger died. In the Fisher Tiger flashback, Vice Admiral Strawberry actually outright says to Kizaru that the Navy confirmed Jinbei was as big and as strong as Fisher Tiger himself, and this is a clear example of a captain and first mate being equals in terms of power. And you can't really try to debunk this or anything because this is straight from the manga. If you don't take SBSs and Vivre cards as canon for whatever reason, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but for whatever reason, this is the best argument that I can provide you, and that's it. There's the 4 main examples. There are definitely a few more you can find scattered around the series, and Oda even uses this for characters that aren't pirates. Many people would argue that Akainu and Kizaru have a relationship that can be called a captain to vice captain dynamic, and I would actually agree. Oda does paint them as a bit of a duo at times. Maybe this will be more fleshed out once we get more of them on screen, but that would be dope. Now, that's basically the point of this video, to try and put some respect on the vice captains, and those are 4 examples of vice captains being comparable to their captains in terms of power. And if that's the case, then from now on I just don't want to see the vice captains being disrespected. The main purpose of this video is to purge all vice captain disrespect. I want to see vice captains respected from now on. My boy Rayleigh, my boy Ben Beckman, my boy Killer, you know, my boy Jinbei. I mean, that doesn't really count because it's a flashback and whatnot, but you know, put some respect on the vice captains. That's the purpose of this video. We pushing this agenda, the vice captain agenda. I'm gonna make it happen. I want you guys from now on to put respect on the vice captains. I've said that like 5 times already, but yeah, we've obviously reached the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like the video if you enjoyed. Leave your thoughts on the vice captain agenda in the comment section down below, and if you have any counter arguments or rebuttals or whatever, if you disagree with me, let me know and I'll gladly, you know, address your points in the comment section, or maybe even in a future video if you make some compelling points. That's it from me though, guys. I've been Fiji. Peace.